I re-listened to Maurice's dialogue episode. I would love to hear a bit about that. How do you balance the stylized dialogue of your story with natural speech?
Yeah, so I say I like to walk this tightrope of how people actually speak and how I wish they spoke. And that's kind of the line I tend to try to straddle as best I can. Because frankly, I'm just fascinated by how people speak. I spend all day listening to my middle schoolers do amazing things to the English language. So like, oh, we love your stylized dialogue. And I'm just like, yeah, man. Have you heard middle schoolers? Because ouch. And yet it's so fascinating to see how they come at language and how inventive they are with language. And so I'm sitting there and they wonder why I hang out so often with them. But part of it's just because I love your inventiveness with language. I can't grade it for nothing, so that's your teacher, other teachers' problems. But for me and my purposes, I love it. And so what I end up doing is I'm very I'm I don't want to say terribly. Yeah, I'm pretty ruthless when I'm always have Howard talked earlier about always having his notepad with him. I do the same thing. I always have my notepad with me, except I'm not afraid to use ballpoint pen because that's the way God intended when it comes to writing. But I always have it with me to study because I'm always studying how people talk, and I'm always jotting that down. Because I'm always, like I said, I'm trying to pick up on those patterns. And so it's one thing about picking up new slang, for example. I'm always there for that. Um, in fact, I just had an editor give me some edit notes back about was that even a whole sentence that you because I had one of my characters greet another one with how you what, and he's like, "Are you missing some I don't know a verb or something in there?" And I'm like, "Look, in Indianapolis, that is a very hood greeting of how are you doing. And so how you what if you hear someone say how you what, you know they got to be from Indianapolis,
I was gonna say, I guess I've been in India enough that I got it. Makes sense
right?
to me.
And so yeah, so there is that balance where I'm just like I'm trying to learn how, I'm trying to always listen for how people speak and the words they're using, how they're using them. But then at the same time, I'm like, I want to do something different. I want to recontextualize the language they're using. And I think that by that sort of bouncing back and forth, that holding those two positions in tension, I think that's what makes for the stylized dialogue that I have.
Yeah, I think one of the most important aspects of that is being a good listener, like
Mm,
all the time. And when I say a good listener, I kind of mean a good spy.
yeah.
You know, it's yeah, you're just soaking up everything you hear. It's all going in. It's all going to get used. Um, and the second part is every word you put on the page for dialogue, um, you need to be mindful about what those words are. You know, did I just use a cliche? Did I use a
Hmm.
cliche because the character uses a cliche, or because for me that's shorthand? Sandra and I were watching, I think 2 nights ago, the I can't remember which episode it was. Might have been the first one. The latest drop of Wheel of Time on Prime. Um, and Matt Coffin is complaining about how fast his brain runs. And he says, yeah, my brain's running 100 miles an hour. And I grabbed the remote and pushed pause and said, no, nothing in your world travels at 100 miles per hour. Pick another metaphor. That is either bad writing or or just slop. You know, somebody wasn't being mindful. Because yeah, it's an easy metaphor. Everybody knows what Matt means, but it's terrible world building because nothing in that world goes 100 miles an hour. And I think about that stuff all the time
Yep.
when my characters are talking.
Well,
Oh no, I just dropped hey, how you what? And no, none of them live in Indianapolis. I just like the way that phrase sounds. I'm not actually allowed to use it.
yeah. Well, and one of the things that's important, and the Wheel of Time example brings this to the fore, is your use of language needs to support the world you've built and the story you want to tell.
Mhm.
You know, I remember back when the first Avengers movie came out, you know, just the first time we brought all these people together on the same screen, that one of the complaints that I read about was that it was too quippy, that it had too many of those one-liner, fast talk, whatever. I happen to love that type of thing in a movie, and so it worked really well for me. But
Mhm.
when I rewatch it, I can see why, if they were looking for something else, if they were looking for a different mood, then those quips don't fit. You know, we've been watching things like uh, Paradise and Silo, which are kind of long, slow burn drama shows that do use uh, really clever turns of phrase in their dialogue that were enough to keep us interested,
Mhm.
but they weren't quippy. And so they were using the language was supporting the mood or the thing.
Yeah, because yeah, and see, I have that weakness for the quippy dialogue, but but part of that is I grew up with like watching the Thin Man movies, for
Yeah,
example. I used to love those, and those sort of screwball comedies of peak Hollywood, and that's what I came up watching, and I'm just like, oh yeah, just how can I do that? But then I think the important part is, for at least for in my process, is how do I recontextualize that? Because
right.
in order to keep it interesting and to ground it into the story I'm trying to tell.
Right. Well, and one of the things that, I mean, Howard and I, when we're watching shows, we really love when something in the dialogue is a turn of phrase that makes us rethink, you know, and it's really clever. And I can tell, oh my gosh, the writers, they're so smart. Um, but not every book or show actually wants that. It makes me sad because I love it. Now I
Right.
want it in everything I want to watch, but it doesn't serve every story.